twice, Okay, so today we've covered on your synopsis of strong verb, we have covered the cow, we've covered the nifal, we've covered the PL, the pual, the hitpael, hifil, and hafal. We've covered all of those, the major verbal stems in Hebrew. And now we're going to look at, from here on out to the end of the course, if you want to call it that, we're going to look at just a few more things. The last major thing we have to look at is pronominal suffixes, which we're going to consider today. Following today's lesson, you will have, if you've been to all of them, you will have a good handle on how to work through the Hebrew Old Testament. There are, of course, nuances and things. We're going to try to cover some of the more major ones, like weak verbs, geminate verbs, those kinds of things. We're going to work on some of that stuff together. But really, there's no way to prepare you completely for everything that's going to show up in the Old Testament. All the different verbal conjugations and how the vowels are inflected in each Hebrew word. I wish I could in some way prepare you for that. A lot of it's just going to come down to your own working through the Old Testament in Hebrew, and you're getting a feel for it on your own, independent of our time together. But I do want to look at pronominal suffixes. With that said, we're going to consider the suffixes and attach them to a few words. Pronominal suffixes are everywhere. These guys show up in almost every verse. They're extremely important to know, to be able to recognize. Like the perfect paradigm, the perfect suffixes, you want to know those, and the imperfect prefixes, you want to know those as well. The pronominal suffixes is one thing that, as much as anything else, and perhaps more than anything else, you want to nail down memorizing, because they're going to show up all the time. And if you don't know pronominal suffixes, you're going to be confused in a lot of ways. You're going to be confused as far as the what is the ground form consonant. We have an extra ground form consonant here. What's going on? And pronominal suffixes are they're not hard. There's a lot of similarities between the plural. There's a plural set and there's a singular set, and we'll talk about why in just a minute. But the pronominal suffixes are essential. I want to make that absolutely clear. If you want to go through the Hebrew scriptures, pronominal suffixes cannot be missed, cannot be overlooked. And they're similar to something we've already considered, the construct state. Does anybody remember what the construct state taught us in Hebrew? What did it express? The construct state expressed possession. It usually was a noun followed by our sere, yud, ending, and then following noun. In the days of Judges. Joseph's, or cow of Joseph. Wife of Jacob. It expressed possession. And I mentioned pronominal suffixes way back then, that pronominal suffixes are the most common way that the Hebrew text expresses possession. Pronominal suffixes really are possessive pronouns. Possessive pronouns. They're always attached to the end of a word, and they very seldom undergo any major inflection as far as, the vowels are concerned. The consonants are all going to stay the same. So, let's go through a paradigm real quick and look at the pronominal suffixes and give you an idea of how they're used, because we've got quite a bit of ground to cover. Now, there's two different sets of pronominal suffixes. There is a set that goes with singular nouns, and there's a set that goes with plural nouns. And the reason for that is, you remember the masculine plural ending. Like if we wanted to write masculine plural of horses, we have Hebrew word for horse, sus. But then we want to say horses, we add our hirik, yud, final form, mem. Susim, horses. What if we wanted to refer to your horses? Now my horses, your horses. We would attach a pronominal suffix, and in Hebrew, when you attach a pronominal suffix to the end of a noun, the masculine plural ending goes away. You don't have any trace of it. It's just gone. And the way you will know whether we are referring to your horse or your horses will be determined by which set of pronominal suffixes we use, the singular set or the plural set. Now, to make it even easier, the Hebrews have a similar set for the singular and the plural. They're very similar. They're not the same, but they're very similar. And so that's going to help in your memorization, but it means it's important for you to be able to distinguish. Otherwise, you're going to be referring to plurals that are not there and referring to singulars when in fact it's referring to plurals. So it's important to distinguish between the two. We'll attach some to sus, give you an idea of what's going on there. So here's the singular noun endings. So when you have a singular noun, just horse, one horse, it's singular. Here's going to be your singular endings. Then we have over here plural endings. When you're referring to horses, but you wouldn't know it's horses because the masculine plural is gone, so you have to have the pronominal suffix to show you that it is the plural. Now, I'm going to write sus and then put the endings on all of them. That's how Pastor Carl did it with me. Sus is a easy one because it's an easy word to remember and because it contains no bagad kafat letters or anything like that, gutturals. It's going to force a change. So for the singular endings, we have in the first person common singular. We have sus. And then the first common singular ending is just a hirik yud. That's it. So if it's first person common, how would we translate that if we're showing possession? My horse. My horse. Yes, this one's in the singular, so it's my horse. The horse belonging to me, first person. Now, if we wanted to express in the plural, my horses, we write susim, but the masculine plural ending, gone. Not hearing about that one. We have a patak with the yud. Susei, my horses. That's the first common singular. Now, second masculine, singular. Hope I don't get too cramped in here. You got quite a few to go through. Oops. The second masculine is a shava, and then final form cough with a comets inside the cough. Ooh. Now this is important. The final form cough is going to be a regular staple of our pronominal suffixes. So it's important to get which vowels going where. This one, the second masculine singular, your, speaking to Mr. Jones, your horse. In the second person, to a male, Shava, final form, Kaf with the commas. Now, for the plural in the second masculine singular, we have sus again. And we have a similar ending. We have su seka, your horses. If I was referring to both Justin's and Mr. Jones, Jake's horses, I'm saying your horses to a group of men in the second person. Your horses. Now, for second feminine singular. Let's see, we'll do the singular first. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I was thinking it would be like, so Mitchell, horses, your horses, plural horses.
Yes, your horses. Yes.
Is it also a group of?
Yes, because it's no, I'm sorry, correction. It is the second masculine singular with the plural for the noun. So it would be your horses. Yes, correction. Very good, Miss Jones. This is where homeschooling moms come in, save the day, correct my faulty grammar. Very good. Excellent. So there is the second feminine singular. That's right. We have plurals coming up where it's going to be plural, both the noun and the person being referred to. So yes, thanks for pointing that out. Here is the second feminine singular. We have su sake. We have a sere instead of a shava, and the shava has moved and is now camping out in the final form kaf. So you see very similar, subtle differences there. Hadn't drank enough of my tea yet this morning. All right, so in the second feminine singular, if we're referring to her horses, we have, yes, and Mrs. Jones pointed out something that confused me when I was learning pronominal suffixes, and it took a while just going over them, reviewing constantly, just to get it in my mind, and you can see it doesn't stay not as constant as I would like it to be. Here is your second feminine singular plural for horses. Now the reason horses takes the masculine ending is because it's a masculine noun. But in the feminine it still disappears when we add a pronominal suffix. This one looks similar to the dual ending, the noun paradigm dual ending, a pair of horses that we learned. The only thing is you've got a final form kaf instead of a final form mem. So you see, in the plural, we're starting to develop some similarities here. We've got yuds appearing between the final form kafs and the ground form consonants of the noun. Now for the third masculine singular. And we have, this is so common, the third masculine singular pronominal suffix. I'm going to trim my cough a little bit. Cough needs to go on a diet. There we go. Is a holum. The full holum for the third masculine singular. That one appears all the time. You see a full holum at the end of a noun or at the end of verbs, participles, and stuff. Just assume it's his horse in the third person. Or oftentimes it could be it. Sometimes it'll be its. I'm thinking of Genesis 11 when I had to
do that one in Hebrew, the Tower of Babel. When they're referring to the tower that's being built and its top is in the heavens, I think it has a third masculine singular pronominal suffix. But it's the full holum, that's all it is. But that baby is everywhere, all over the place in the Old Testament scriptures. Third masculine singular, do another sus. This one is very easy to recognize. Whoops, writing with the wrong pen. I like seeing it in red because it just makes it jump. Sometimes I like stuff to jump. You have a comet with a yud and then a vav. Not a shurek, not a holum, just a vav. Just a vav. This is the third masculine singular, his plural, horses. His horses. This one is common too and easy to remember. We're seeing a lot of similarities here. We're seeing third masculine singular. You got holum, which is the vav with the little holum designation. You got a vav over here, undesignated. You've got coughs for the second person. The plurals tip you off with a pair of yuds. And then the singulars is just a yud with a vowel. So lots of regularity here. Finally, the third feminine singular. See if we can fit it all on the board. Personal challenge. Third feminine singular. This one's rather interesting. And I'm very, very grateful that this one has the distinguishing characteristics it does. Otherwise, pronominal suffixes would be a nightmare. You have a hey. I told you about this a long time ago. You never see a dagesh in a guttural, except for there. And Dr. Van Pelt, in his little work, says it's actually not a dagesh. Okay, it's actually not a dagesh. It's called a mappiq. M-A-P-P-I-Q is the technical term he gives it, because you'll never see in the Hebrew scriptures, you'll never see a dagesh in a guttural. In the aleph and the ayin, there's really not even a place to put it. But in the hey of the third feminine singular pronominal suffix, you have that little dot that, because no gutturals are receptive of the dageshes, that thing is going to stand out to you, and it's going to know, oh, it's referring to her horse. It's her. Or oftentimes it can be it as well. It can be it as well. Also thinking of, just throw this in, Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel again. When the Lord names the city, see, man's trying to make a name for themselves. I'm trying to preach the whole sermon. Man's trying to make a name for themselves building this city. Well, the Lord ends up confusing their languages, and the Lord gives the city a name. And it's in the Hebrew third feminine singular pronominal suffix, he called her name Babel. Now that's important. That can't be overlooked in the Hebrew text. He called her name Babel. And why is that important? Because in Revelation, Babel shows up as the whore of the earth. Her name he called Babel. That has implications for New Testament theology. Babel in the book of Revelation is the great whore that prostituted herself to the earth and caused the earth to go astray by her abomination. So that's kind of stuff, whoa, you don't catch that in an English translation, but it's there in the Hebrew, I promise. Go look it up. So third feminine singular pronominal suffix is a very easy one to parse. Yes?
Is there any other word or anything with a mappiq in it?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. If it is, I've missed it. But the reason it's called a mappiq and not a dagesh is because it's in the guttural. So this is the only time you're going to see a guttural with what looks like a dagesh in the middle of it. And that will tip you off, let you know, oh, we're dealing with pronominal suffix here. And that's a fairly common one. The third person singulars are very common because, like I said, it can be the person, it can be her, it can be him, or it can be it And you'll see, depending on sometimes whether the noun is masculine or feminine, you'll see either one of those appear. And then in the third feminine singular over here, we have big old massive ending. Whole lot going on with this one. You have this big old boy here. You have a segol with a yud, and then you have a hey with a comets underneath it. Similar to the third feminine singular, but not quite. Now, let's see if we can fit these plurals on this board. I think we're going at a pretty good rate. So, first common plural. We have over here, y'all gonna have Seuss spelling down without a problem after today. And this one is cool because it bears a strong resemblance, and that's a shurik, not a final form cough. Suseinu. That's the first common plural. Does that remind you of anything? That pronominal suffix? If you look at your the perfect paradigms and you look at the suffixes there, what is the first common plural? It's nu. So, as a pronominal suffix, you're going to be looking for this sere to make an appearance. That's going to let you know we're not dealing with a verb ending, which Seuss is a noun anyway. So, they're helping you out. First common plural, they're using a lot of the same letters. They're not trying to trick you, come up with different stuff. And the first common plural, very similar. So in the first common plural, that would be our horse. Our horse. You got a husband and wife like Jake and Hayden that have a horse? It's our horse. First common plural, it's more than one person, just one horse, our horse. And then in the plural over here, Suseinu, you have a yud, exactly the same affirmative, you just have the addition of the yud. So now that we're into plural, this is our horses. Our horses. And then for the second masculine, man, that's worse looking too. There we go. I did go to school and learn to write neat. Maybe not as neat as my mother would have liked, but okay, second masculine, we have Shava, cough. I'm sorry if it's getting small. Try to keep it legible. Sus Kim. Sus Kim. Your horse. And this puts you in mind of the second masculine plural, perfect, the verbal suffix. Instead of the tav, though, you have a cough. But same, shava, the vowel is still a segol, and you have the final form mem. And then second masculine plural over here. we have, oops, get my red marker out. There you go. Tsutseikim, just added the Shiva, now Sere. You have the presence of a Yud. Let's do this second feminine plural here. There really is so many similarities, and we'll talk about them here in just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and write these on the board, and then we'll discuss the similarities together, because it helps when you can see uniformity and you get the distinguishing trademarks of something in your head. Can tip you off the next time you'll be looking at something and, oh yeah, I remember now, that was indicative of such and such a we gonna fit it all on the board. That's what I'm talking about. So this is one of those paradigms, and this is the way I've chosen to write it. Some people will do the singulars and group them all on one side and the plurals, and you end up with 4 columns instead of 2, like Dr. Greenberg does it. I don't find that the most helpful way. I like 1 column like this running down. I find that much easier to remember, but I try to be careful when I say this, but you do you when it comes to that. However you want to write it, if whatever way works best for you. And we're going to have a second lesson on these guys, because there's a lot of ways in which they're utilized, and we're fast running out of time. We'll have another lesson next week on the ways the pronominal suffixes are attached to things. The pronominal suffixes can be attached to nouns, and frequently are, but they can also be attached to verbs. So remember the verb bow, come, to go. Well, you can attach the third masculine singular pronominal suffix to the participial form of bow, and it can be his coming. So pronominal suffixes don't just attach themselves to nouns, but they frequently do, and you'll see the paradigm like we have written here. You'll see the paradigm written with them attached to nouns. So let's look at some similarities here. Let's break this down, because this can look a little intimidating on first glance. So let's work through it. For our singular endings with plural and singular nouns, the first common is simple. We have yud, bringing up the end. The yud is an easy tip-off, because the only suffix that you'll see with a yud in the paradigms we've already learned is you've got that first common singular, but that includes the tav with the hirik and the yud at the end. This is just yud and then the vowel with your noun there. And then the second feminine singular in the imperfect. But you're going to know that because it's got the performative tav attached to it as well. These obviously don't. So the pronominal suffix in the first person, you've got the yud. In the second person, masculine and feminine, you've got just the kaf with some slight vowel inflection and shavaz jumping around, but it's just the kaf. Over here, you've got the kaf, but it's with the yud. It's just going to be a matter of writing the paradigm over and over and over and over again. I wrote this paradigm who knows how many times, dozens. I actually gave I was making a list for Rebecca and actually grabbed a piece of paper to write on. The other side of it was the pronominal suffix paradigm. No, that wasn't the inspiration for the lesson today, but just happens to be lying around, those lists lying around all the time, or the written paradigms. So you have the kaf with the yud for the second person when it's a plural noun, susim, horses. So that lets you know that it's similar. You've got a kaf, but it's got a yud inserted in there, letting you know, oh, this is plural. This is not just singular horse. This is horses. And then in the third person, the masculine, we have the vavs. One appears as a holum, the other with the yud and the comets. In the third person, in the feminine, you have the hey makes an appearance. You got the big old segol yud and then a hey with the comets. For the third feminine singular, her horses over here. You got the easily distinguishable. I mean, can you imagine if that guy wasn't there? That could be anything. The comet's hey ending is one of the most common endings in Hebrew. We've already discussed. You just read through the names of the Bible that end in AH. Obadiah, Nehemiah, Micah, Jeremiah, Hezekiah, just Isaiah. It goes on and on. The comet's hey is so common in Hebrew. So they did us a favor and landed that guy in there, so we know this is a third feminine pronominal suffix and not just another Hebrew word ending comet's hey. So they really made our job easy there. You got hey over here. And then we come to the plurals. There's a whole lot of similarities down here. You've got the nu, which is something we've already learned when we went through the verbal paradigms. We learned that nu, minus the sere and sere yud, that's the suffix for first common plural when it comes to the perfect. So that's something we've already learned. Now we've just got, keep in mind, there might be a sere. It might be a pronominal suffix then. And then in the second masculine, we have the kaf, segol mem. Again, as we've seen with the plurals, over here, same thing. You just add a yud. The shavah changes to a sere. Same thing down here in the second feminine. The only difference between those two is you've got mem changing to the nun for the feminine. The nun's easy to remember as feminine. You just think of the Catholic abomination of the nunnery, whatever they call it. So you just remember nun, it's females. Nun, you got over there, second feminine. In the plural, same thing. You just add that yud. And this reminds us of the perfect suffixes. We've got the tav with the segol and the nun for the feminine. The tav, the segol, and the mem for the masculine. So these are things we've already seen or are already used to and familiar with. Now, when it comes to the third person, it's a little bit different. You got these really big endings for the plural of horses in the third person down here. You've got, again, sere, which has been a staple in the plural. You've got sere going all the way down, yud's going all the way down, and now you've got hey with a segol. The kaf has been exchanged for a hey, and you've got the mem, again, with the third masculine, the nun, again, with the third feminine. So, very similar all the way down. We've got a little bit of an anomaly over here on the singular of horses. You've got a comets with a mem, and then just a comets with a nun. And for some reason, these were the hard ones for me to memorize. I was so focused on getting my vowels and shavahs, and when it came to the singular endings, third masculine, third feminine, I'm like, well, what could they be? I've already used all my kafs and segols and heys and segols and the final form mem, final form nun. What could it be? It was a simple comets and mem, comets and nun. So don't overthink those. Those guys are simple, but very, very important. And because we didn't have enough time to get to it, we'll talk next week about the pronominal suffixes, but I'll give you a little introduction to what we'll be considering next time. We'll work on attaching the pronominal suffixes to different words, some nouns, some imperatives that can be attached to imperative, like the verb for judge, to judge. You can attach a second person pronominal suffix, you judge. Of course, the imperative almost always appears or it does always appear in the second person, but you'll still see the pronominal suffixes attached. We'll look at the pronominal suffixes attached to the direct object marker that we've already considered. This fellow over here. The pronominal suffixes will frequently be attached to this guy, and it'll just be him, or her, or them, they, them. Even though we have already learned the pronouns, that still happens on a regular basis in the Hebrew Bible. So once you be aware of it, your pronominal suffixes will come into play there with the direct object marker. We might even do some tests. I might just throw up something with a pronominal suffix, and you guys tell me what pronominal suffix it is. Try to help me translate it. So we'll look at these in the future, and if you nail these down, when it comes time for us to do some translation exercises, which I hope to close out our Hebrew course together with just a few translation exercises, we'll pick some that include some of these guys. So be thinking of pronominal suffixes, locking these guys away, because they are everywhere. And if you're aware of them, it can easily derail you if you're not thinking of a pronominal suffix being there. You can be looking for, well, this has got too many consonants. It's not making sense. And just really lock these guys down. Seldom will you have any of the vowels making any major changes. Every now and then you'll have a sagol change to a shava or something because of the other vowels within the verb or within the noun. But it's rare. And even if you do, the cough, with the yud, those kinds of things will tip you off and let you know. Plus, if you've worked your way through the narrative of the Hebrew text, you're going to have some idea of the people that are being discussed there. A lot of times the masculine ones are more common than the feminine, but you get to a book like Ruth and Esther, and the third and second feminine pronominal suffixes are everywhere. And even in the narrative portions, there's a lot of female characters in Genesis, some in Judges, and different things. So the pronominal suffixes are fun. I like them because they're easy to translate. You just do my, you, him, her, we, you, plural, as all the professors say. And down south they say y'all, and that we really don't have an English plural besides you, so we're just going to go borrow the southern term y'all. Well, y'all ought to be a part of the regular vernacular, I think. But anyway, I know I'm butchering the Queen's English. I'm sorry. And then the third, you've got the they and the them. So they're really easy to translate, and they appear frequently. So lock these down, and we'll come back to the pronominal suffixes next week and look at a little bit more, since I didn't get to put up all my examples because we just got to looking at the paradigm. So anyway, any questions? And then we'll go ahead and close in prayer. Ethan, yes.
Will pronominal suffixes ever change any of their vowels or anything like that?
Seldom they will, yes. As far as the vowels underneath the consonants that are added by the pronominal suffix, no. Those will stay the same. You'll keep the vowels that are underneath all the consonants that are added by the suffixes. Every now and then, you'll have a sagol change to a shava. You'll have this guy change to a sere. All the consonants will stay the same. The vowels will sometimes undergo slight inflection, but it's usually not enough to really throw you for a loop. It'll be pretty uniform the whole way through. And as we work through translation exercises and stuff, we'll see some of the ways that pronominal suffixes are attached. For instance, when you attach the second masculine to a guttural, sometimes this shava will be butted up to a patak. You'll have the hataf, patak, attached to that guttural letter. So when you start throwing gutturals, begad kafats, and you bring in a verb that's got some really interesting vowel conjugations, you'll see some things slightly inflected, but all of the vowels, like I mentioned before, all of the vowels that are brought in, that are native to the consonants in the pronominal suffixes, those guys will stay the same. So they're not hard. This is a lot. It looks like a lot to memorize. Once you get used to doing them, seeing them, they jump at you, and you'll start catching them. So, all right, we'll go ahead and close with prayer. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this day. We thank you that you have chose to make us your people. We thank you for your grace that you pour out upon us daily. Pray that you would continue to bless our times of study in the Old Testament language of Hebrew. Pray that you would bless it to our understanding of your word, Father. We thank you for your precious word, for preserving it for us, and we pray now that you would be with Pastor Little as he stands to deliver that word to us. Pray that you would bless the message he's prepared. Pray that you would fill him with your Holy Spirit, with power, that the word preached might be edifying and most of all glorifying to your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ, in whose name I pray. Amen.